Hi, I'm Kendra Burton. In this tape, we're going to do one complete oil painting, step by step, start to finish. Remember, one of the best advantages of learning by video is that you can stop the tape and review as often as you'd like. The sea has always fascinated me with its endless motion and capacity to reflect so many surrounding colors. I think some people are concerned in learning how to paint seascapes because it's difficult to capture the motion and to hold it still. In this tape, I'll give you some information about brush strokes, shading, and blending that will help you capture the motion, the color, and the mood of a beautiful seascape. This is the Aqua Blue Seascape. As you can see, the painting is done in variations of blue with splashing foam and sparkling wet sand. Although the colors are basically cool, the off-white gives it warmth. The rocks are lighter in the distance to create depth. The feature wave has an area where you can almost see through the water. This we call the translucent. I think painting the translucent is one of the funnest parts of painting seascapes. Now, the first thing we need to do before we start is to make sure you have all the supplies you need. Once you have the necessary supplies, you can now prepare your palette colors. If you'd like to look at the palette here, first we start with titanium white. I've squirted out a whole bunch of titanium white. Don't cut yourself short on this. If you have a little extra, that's just fine. The next color that we're squirting out is cadmium yellow medium. We're actually basically using a pretty limited palette. The third color is cadmium red light, which we have right here. Then burnt sienna. You want to make sure that you don't get raw sienna too. There's a difference between burnt and raw sienna. Burnt sienna is just a little bit redder. That's the difference. Then we have ultramarine blue and cerulean blue. A pretty limited palette. Just 6 colors is all we're going to use. Okay, now I've pre-mixed a couple of these, but I'm going to tell you what we use to put into them so that you can get the right combination. First of all, we'll have 3 blues. We'll start with a darker blue that we'll use in the water, then we'll go to a little bit lighter blue, which is here for the sky as well as the water, and then the lightest blue, which I'll just refer to as light blue, that we'll use on the horizon sky as well as in the water. Okay, the dark blue, for the combination of the dark blue, in fact, it would be a good idea if you'd like to keep track of these colors, to watch this tape through first with a tablet in hand and a pencil so that you can write down the color combinations, and then play the tape back after you have the combinations written down and mix later. So let me give you some colors that go into this first one. The dark blue aqua color uses, first of all, start with your white, then you'll want to mix some cerulean blue. Now, cerulean is the turquoise blue, and it uses mostly cerulean. After that, then put a little bit of, let's see, ultramarine blue and cadmium red light, which is here, and a little bit of burnt sienna. Now, when I say a little bit, in fact, as I'm mixing, I'll tell you to use a touch. When I say to use a touch, let me show you how much a touch is. You'll want to grab about, if you can see this, about this much on your palette knife, just a little touch. If I tell you to use a little bit more, then I'll tell you to use a small amount. But it's important to get the right combinations. So as I tell you the colors to mix, you'll want to do it in the order that I give it to you too. Okay, the next color, then we have, this has a little less. You'd start with white, use a little bit of cerulean blue, and then just a little dot of red to gray that down. Then divide this into 2, pull it across over here, and add a little bit of white to create the lighter blue color. Okay, then we'll move on to the green. Now this green, you want to make sure it's kind of a dark, dusty aqua green. In here, the colors that we have combined are cerulean blue. Now remember, I'm giving you this in the order that they're used. So mostly cerulean blue, then white, burnt sienna, and ultramarine blue. That's your darkest green. And make sure that this green is a darker value than your blue too, because of the way we blend it. The next color we'll use for the translucent part of the Seascape, this is where you can see through, almost see through the wave. The colors that you combine for this one, this is called the pale mint green, and we'll use some white and a little bit. Now this again is just a little bit of cerulean and a little bit of yellow. Now try not to get it too yellow too. If you get it too yellow, it won't coordinate as well with the picture. After that, we'll mix a color that we're going to use for the shadow side of the foam, which is kind of a lavender gray. In the lavender gray, we're going to use a little bit of white, ultramarine blue, and cerulean blue. Then, to create kind of the lavender color, we'll add a little bit of cadmium red light to this. Okay. Now for off-white, the way you mix off-white is, and you need to be careful of this too, grab your white, and here again, just a little bit of yellow is fine, just a touch. Okay, that will, you want this color to be, just like it says, off-white, just kind of almost an eggshell color. Then the next ones that we're going to do now, these next colors, you will want to, you have all of these next colors I'm going to tell you are a combination of different variations of these three ingredients. You'll use ultramarine blue, which is your darkest blue, and burnt sienna and white. These three ingredients will go into all of these next colors. What you'll want to do is have some be a little lighter and some be a little darker, and I'll tell you how to do that as we go. Okay, first of all, we'll start by a color that's kind of, it's going to be a light gray blue. It might even be kind of close to this. Okay, these three colors will take a little bit of white. This is for the very distant part of the land. You don't need too much of this. I'm not sure if you can see that. Kind of a light, it's a gray, blue, bluish gray kind of a color. Okay, now this is a little too red, so to counteract that, we'll grab a little bit of blue. Kind of a dark blue gray, maybe even just a little bit more blue. Then you can go on to another lighter, a little bit darker color, excuse me. This will be for a rock that's a little closer. Grab a couple of these colors, we'll put over here and grab some white. A bit darker here. Now as you're mixing, sometimes this happens with people who start and they're not quite sure how much paint to use. And so they'll start with one color or another color and add a whole bunch of white to try to counteract that. If you find that it's just not getting close and you're adding a lot of one color or another color, you may need to grab it and pull it aside and start over. I've had people use a lot more paint, I think, than this is necessary simply because they don't know what to do with it or they keep adding and adding. I remember when I first started painting seascapes, we were told to do a blue, and as we were mixing that, I started with blue and added white and white and white and white, and it took a long time to bring that up to the right color. Okay, there's kind of a medium blue-gray. We'll use that for our middle rock color. Then we'll go even a little darker. Now, when you go darker, see, you don't need as much white, so we'll grab a little bit of blue. I'll start with these. Now I'm going to mix these up. I'm going to have almost a black here, but then I'll lighten it up just a little bit with white. Now on your lighter colors, see, I start with white and then mix the colors into it, but this one, See, we'll probably need a little bit more of this simply because these are going to do more rocks. And just a little touch of white in this. Okay. Now those colors will be for your foreground rock. Then you'll have two more colors that you'll mix with this. One for the sand and one for another little line that I'll show you about. Okay, the sand, of course, will be a little lighter. And you may want to make this a little browner. See, we're still using those same three colors, ultramarine, burnt sienna, and white. This sand is actually pretty dark on this painting. You want it actually to be kind of a grayish brown. Don't really want it brown because the painting is so blue. Okay, maybe a little bit darker. Let's squirt out a little bit more ultramarine. Okay. And the last little color I may have mentioned, this one, is going to be for the rock highlights. We'll start with white, add a little bit of sienna, a little bit of yellow, and then tone it down just slightly, not very much when I say a dot, just a little dot of blue. Okay, you want to create kind of a yellowish tan. This is the rock highlight color. Okay, that should pretty well do it for the colors that we need to mix. Now, when you're done mixing your colors, you will want to move on to your layout. And to do the layout, what we'll do first is we'll start, in fact, it's best for me to tell you to use medium with a little bit of paint instead of for me to say use a little of this color with medium. Lots of thinner and a little bit of ultramarine. Okay. See, now if you get a color, if you want to look at this, if you get a color that's too dark, can you see this? Sometimes I'll have people that sketch in with this color and it's actually too dark to do your layout with. You want it really, really, really thin. Very, very thin. Okay. Now we'll come up to the canvas and we'll start with our horizon line. Come down about a third of the way from the top. Try to get this nice and straight. They have nice things that you can use if you want to buy these in the store, that either a straight edge or little helpers to help you get this nice and even. There's our horizon line. Try to keep it pretty straight. Okay, then the next thing you'll do, we'll put in the feature wave. Now on this, when you put in the slant of the wave, you'll want to make it slightly slanted but not too far. So in other words, not like this. I've seen waves that kind of come up in like this, and actually it's fairly straight, just slightly slanted. So here's the top of our feature wave. I'll call this the feature wave, the one that's the biggest focal point. Grab a little bit more thinner with a little touch of paint. Okay, then I'm going to block in a little bit of the foam. I will outline actually the top and the bottom line of the foam. Now when you do this foam too, don't make it really straight. See how jagged this is? This will almost be a reminder to us to make this really, really uneven, really jagged and splashy. Okay, up over here on the left, going a little higher, so this is where our translucent kind of see-through part of the wave is. Very uneven, bounce up and down, all along here. Okay, then I'll have you put in a line right under where this will come in the foreground. This is the foreground foam. We can actually, let's see, go kind of like that. I hope you can see this. I am painting pretty thin because you don't want this to show up in your painting. You want to kind of blend this in as you're painting. Here's a little bit of a line on top of that foam. So we're going to have a splashing foam right in here and splashing foam right up here. Okay, along there, clear out to the side. Okay, then the last thing we'll block in are our rocks. Now you want to create distance, we're going to put this a little bit lighter mountain kind of right back in here. I'll actually call it the lighter rock color. Okay, and then since that's at a distance, we'll have that really straight line across there for water. Then a little bit closer rock, maybe another one kind of in there somewhere. And then this is where the water comes in, right below. Right there. Okay, now just a couple more rocks and we'll be ready to paint. Now these rocks may look pretty solid, but they're going to look like a lot more rocks once we cut in the highlights. Okay, now we'll get ready to paint. If you want to pick up this is the Bristle Bright number 12 that I'm using today. This we're going to use, we'll start with the medium blue that we mixed up. We're going to paint in the sky. Now as you're painting, you may want to dip into a little bit of your medium. And medium, remember, is what we use to kind of, it thins out the paint, but it still gives it body. I'm using a little quicker drying medium since we're going to be painting fast here, but as you're painting at home, you may want to use a little linseed or maybe a 50-50 blend of linseed plus thinner as your medium. Grab this medium blue, a little bit of thinner, kind of work it around on your palette for a minute, make sure you have a nice texture. And then we're going to start doing, this is what we talked about as the broad stroke. Kind of an arch shape across the top. Really, you want to just really scrub it in like you're trying to get that spot off the floor and it won't come. You just really push into it. The angle of your brush is almost perpendicular, which means it's just coming straight into the canvas. Okay, we'll apply that, kind of a broad stroke, and then scrub it in. A little bit of medium if you need it. This arch shape across the top. Now this happens sometimes. Sometimes you'll get a little hair that will come out of your brushes. It doesn't matter whether they're new or whether they're old. If you're in the middle of doing this, you can grab it off with your paintbrush. Sometimes if it's a finished work and people see a little hair, I think they get really worried. And what you can do to remedy that is if you can grab your palette knife and just, well, I took it off now, but if you can just pick it up carefully with a little tip of your palette knife, it usually works out really well. Okay, so if you get any little stray hairs. All right, now that's pretty good for the darkest part of the sky. Little arch shape. Now, I'm going to just wipe it off with a paper towel and go on into the lightest blue sky color. If you need to grab a little medium, you can do that. We're still using this huge, this number 12, Bristle Bright. Lay it in and scrub it in. Big broad strokes on this one. Now come right up to the top, but don't blend it. What I mean is come right up to the first blue that you put on, but don't blend it yet. We will blend it in a minute. A little bit more medium. Right up to the top edge of these back rocks here. These are just really big strokes, just enough to get the paint in and covered. A couple more shedding hairs here. Okay, now you should have it kind of laid in up to the darker blue, which is your medium blue on the palette. Then you do kind of a scrubbing blend between these two colors, like this. You don't want to be able to see where the dark becomes the light. You want it to just be really a gradual blend. Okay. Now I scrubbed it in, and then now I'm going to cross it a little bit like this. And that's kind of you do a little bit of a blending with this bigger brush, but then there's another brush that you can use that makes it really, really nice. And this is our soft rabbit hair blender. It's so nice. Start with the lightest color. You kind of can, now the touch of this is very, very light. Very, very light. Okay, I'm going kind of circular. I'll do it circular quite a bit like we did with the Bristle Bright. Circular, and then across. Here we'll need a little bit of circular blending in here. Okay, that should do it for your sky. Then you'll want to pick up your Sable Bright, number 10, and we're going to start with the background water. Take a little bit of your medium blue, and we're just going to get the horizon line here. Right along there. Overlap your layout line. Don't want that to show up. Then I'm going to switch brushes to the Bristle Filbert. This is the one, remember, that's kind of flat, but it's shaped like your fingernail. It's kind of curved across the top. Now we'll lay in some little kind of swells here in the background water. First of all, when we paint, we're going to do the background water. This is the area that's right above this feature wave. Background water. We're going to do a couple of little swells, and we'll do these slightly slanted too. Just kind of let that fade out into the distance, and then one more right about in here. This is where the water is going to be swelling up. It's becoming thicker, and it's coming up to kind of a point right before it comes in and breaks. Okay, and just fade that out. Now you can, now that you have those little swells, then you can put in a whole bunch of little smaller swells. And the stroke to do this, you can still use this Filbert number 4, but you'll just come and do very, very horizontal strokes. They don't have to be real exact. We're kind of almost just laying them on at random. These little horizontal strokes in here. Down to the top of your feature wave. Make sure you don't get too much of a scallop either. These are just pretty horizontal strokes right along here. In this background water, we'll actually use 3 different colors of blue. Now I'm curving this a little bit right along this swell so that that will give us the direction of the water. If you can see the direction that I'm going here, this water's coming up into a swell. Okay, now we'll go into our medium blue color, and then we're going to go wherever we haven't touched with this before. A little bit of medium blue, still very horizontal strokes. This is a little information about the direction of water. The more horizontal it is, the flatter your water is going to look. And once you start making sweeping vertical strokes, then your water begins to move. That tells you a little bit, oops, we're in the medium color now. That tells you a little bit about the motion of water. Very, very horizontal strokes when it's flat. Okay, so I've kind of filled in a lot. Now see, it's amazing how it can start to look like water, even just with those couple of colors and a few strokes in there. Now we'll dip into our lighter blue. And this lighter blue, now this is your last color. Remember, we have 3 colors of blue in the water. This last little blue, you'll kind of scrub it in and fill in the blanks. Fill in every place that you don't have paint. It's a good time. This is a good time to sing a song. Bring glass. If you like to paint like I do, I like to listen to some music and sing along as we're painting. Now you're just filling in all these little extra areas. Just make sure you cover. You should be done covering the canvas when you're done with these 3 colors. Make sure you take it right back over into this little, almost a little bay in here. Just kind of scrubbing still, filling in. Now, we actually are going to paint this in first, and then later on we'll add highlights, sun highlights that come right in here, but we will add that a little later on, and that will add a lot of sparkle to your water. Come right down to the top of the little line you're doing for foam here. Scrubbing. Now that should pretty much start making it look like background water way out in the distance. And the next step we're going to go into is the translucent. Now, people love to see a translucent on waves. And in this one, we're going to try to make it so that you can almost see through it. This is the area where we'll put the translucent. And the color that we're going to be using is the color that's called the pale mint green. I'm kind of cleaning out my brush a little bit here before we go on to this color. Now you'll take your Bristle Bright, number 12, a little bit of thinner, a little bit of medium, excuse me. This is such a pretty color. Would love to have a bedspread. This color, it looks just about like a little buttermint. In fact, a lot of these colors look like something you could just about eat, but don't eat them. What you're trying to capture here is an almond shape. This translucent is done in kind of an almond shape, and it's kind of a slanted almond shape. And I'll point that out to you as I do it. Has a little corner, 2 little corners, and it goes on a slant, just like this. You are going to be amazed. This is so fun to do this. This is really exciting to me as a teacher too, knowing how to do it and having learned, and then to see how exciting it is for people that are discovering this. Okay, you've got a little diamond shape in here. Then the next color you're going to move on to, we're going to do this in a light to dark kind of an arrangement. Now, if you need to, I feel like I want to add just a little bit of off-white right up in here. Soft white we've already mixed, to bring in even still a little bit more sun. You'll have to judge this for yourself. The lighter it is, the thinner the water's going to seem and the more sun that it'll bring in, okay? So I kind of want this really light right up in here. Yeah, that's a good color. Okay, now, the next color we'll go into is the one that we call the medium blue, right out on the edge. Now this one will come about there, okay? the medium blue is the next color to come in. Now come up to the color, but don't blend it yet. Come right up to it, and then you block this in. This is your medium blue. We're still using this great big brush. Bristle Bright number 12 is the brush we're using. Still kind of scrub this in. Make sure you cover all your canvas, but lay it next to it. We're not blending yet. Okay, now after you've put this in, then you'll want to do just a kind of a soft blend with the direction of the water, kind of like this, okay? The soft blend is going to come in here. As you blend this, you're going to see it start to become water. It's just so exciting to see this. Okay, then the last one we'll do on this translucent side of the wave is you'll dip into your green, and that will be next. Take it clear down to the rocks. Above the rocks. Now this one, don't get it too far down here. This one comes right under, over the rocks and under the foam, right in here, and very thin right under the foam. And make sure you kind of bounce it up in there. Make this kind of uneven because you want your foam to be kind of uneven in there. Take it back over under these other rocks. Okay, and the same thing here. We'll come up to it and scrub it in, and then we'll blend it. Now do kind of a smooth blend. You're still using this Bristle Bright. Doesn't that look neat? I love to see this. It's starting to look almost translucent right now. Okay, a soft blend. Now this doesn't have to be your finished blending either. We'll do a soft blend in here, and then we'll use our blending brush. So don't worry about it too much. You want to kind of scrub it in and blend it softly, and then we'll blend it with our other brush in a minute. Okay, now we'll clean out the brush, and you're going to do something that's just about the opposite on the part that curls over. You'll use these three colors, but you'll start with the same color, but we'll put it right above the splashing foam. This color is the one that we call the pale mint green, real pretty color. Right above this foam in here. We'll include three colors in this. We won't go into the green on this one. A little bit of the medium blue. And then you go into this darker blue at the top. Ooh, that's a little thick. If you get a little too thick, take a little bit of it off. Okay, there's our darkest blue. And do a little bit of a blend with this. Then a soft blend, you may have to change for a new paper towel. Okay, blend across now with these colors with this same brush that you're using, and then we'll go into a blending brush. Blending brush now I'm using this soft rabbit here. Now watch what this does. This is so neat. This makes waters and sky so neat. Really smooth and glassy. Now as you're painting, if you want to, you could actually insert a little bit of this darker blue right in here too, to even give it a little bit more color if you'd like. Just so that you have the values going from light to dark. Now soft blend across here. Then we're going to get our little fan brush, and don't put any paint on it yet, but as you grab your fan, you'll want to pull over the top to try to create a little bit of motion in your water. A little word of caution when you're doing this too. As you pull across the top, you'll want to make sure you don't come back around. Overlap it and then let it drop off almost straight. Pull it across and then straight, like this, and I'll show you on here. Okay, cross and then almost straight down, just a real gradual. And this won't show up very much. This will just serve to give you kind of some guidelines for what's coming up next. Okay, a little bit of this color pulled in there. Then you'll go into your off-white. This one you'll want to thin down so it's very, very soupy. Grab some medium. Soupy. It has to be something, you don't want chicken soup. You want something that's kind of like clam chowder. Be good. Can you see how soupy that is? Now you'll dip your fan brush into there. Make sure you don't have the blue on it anymore. You may want to practice this too. If you want to just see how this is going to work, it gets kind of tricky in the direction. You may want to practice it right here on your palette. Just do this and pull across to get a feel for how this is going to work. Now you dip into this real soupy white, and you're going to pull across the top. This will give some highlights to this wave. I usually start over here on this side. Okay. Don't hesitate to load up your brush with more paint if you need to. You need to still keep that nice and soupy. I'm going to have to dip in a little bit more to my medium. If you need to practice, make sure it's performing the way you need to. Okay, pull this across some more. See how that just makes that wave just roll right over there. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is move on to the foreground water, which is right in here. And this will be real similar to the background water that we did. We can use the Filbert Bristle number 4, and we're going to just dip into some of the colors. This time, though, we can have a couple of the darker colors. We can put in, well, the other darker color is our green. Okay, this again, just these little horizontal strokes. You can pull into some of that green up there if you want to. Now I'm going into the dark blue color. Have a little bit of the light blue. Now you want to kind of start filling in like we did before. A little darker toward the outsides of your painting, a little lighter in the very center because our sun is shining down from the very center of the picture. Make sure you still keep that dark green right under the wave there. There's a little bit of darker green I'm putting in to give it a little bit more color. Doesn't that look neat? That looks like just a little bit of a swell coming in here. Right down to the front foam line here. Okay, then the next thing we'll do, we can still use the same brush, clean it out a little bit because we're going to dip into this kind of lavender gray. We're going to do the shadow foam next. You can get really wild with this one. People, as they're painting, say, "Oh, I can't hold this too steady. My hand is too shaky." And that's great. This will be just perfect if that's how you are. See how shaky my hand is? I'm kind of almost just jiggling it as I lay this in here. This is a shadow foam. Okay, now you actually have more shadow foam than you do of the highlight foam, which is the off-white. So we'll work this up into here even more. Shadow foam color. Scrub it around. Lots of uneven shapes. Make sure it's kind of nice and uneven down here. The more uneven it is, the splashier it's going to look. See, I've still left, though, a spot to put that, the off-white for the highlights. Okay, now don't go too far. Remember, we've got some rocks in here. We'll bring it probably just a little bit on top of that rock, and then it's splashing right into these right here. Now we'll also have some shadow foam color right here on the bottom. Just really scrub it in. Make it nice and uneven. Little couple of places go back up and some come out a little closer. Okay, then after that, you want to clean your little brush here, and you'll dip into your off-white color. And the off-white goes right above the shadow foam. Same kind of shaky motion here. Just scrub, scrub, scrub it. Now I'm changing the angle on my brush a little bit here. Can you see I'm going a little flatter than instead of scrubbing in? That's because I'm working with such wet paint that I need it to stay on there or to kind of lay on there. Now don't hesitate to kind of cut into that foam too. Do you see what I mean by cut in? Take it even out further than where some of the shadow foam is. That will kind of fold your foam over, make it come a little closer. Okay, we'll push a little bit of this up on in here. This you can kind of just fade out over at the side because you try to keep the lights more in the center of your painting. Splashing foam in there. You can actually take some and make a couple of little dots. We'll get into this a little bit more later on when we highlight. But those little dots, too, make it look really splashy. Okay, now the same thing right here on the foreground water, or foreground foam right here. Splashing off-white. Very uneven. See, I can splash some right up in there, right up into the water that you've just painted. Try to keep this off-white a little cleaner. It may pick up a lot of paint too. Just be careful. The angle of your brush will help it as well as the consistency or the thinness of your paint. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is paint little ribbons of color. Now when we paint ribbons of color, what we're going to do is start with the color and go kind of vertical. We'll do it a vertical strip and then on out, starting with the lightest in the middle, out to the darker colors. We'll start with off-white. I'm still using this neat little filbert number 4. In this picture, the sun is coming straight above us, and sometimes it will be at the side or from different angles, but this one we're going to do it straight above. And this is my favorite angle because you can always make so many neat splashes on the water. Okay, you probably can't see this, but you'll be able to see it a little bit better once we add the other colors on the other side. Now the white doesn't need to be too wide. Just a little white in here. And you can take it down about 1/2 inch from the bottom of your canvas. Even though we have sand in there, you can still take it down quite a bit. Okay, then the next color you'll go into, in fact, I want to add a little bit more white there. This next color is pretty dark. Just a little bit more white out to the side here. Next color is your medium blue, a little bit thinner. Thin it down. I call it thinner. It's medium. Okay, now this one will take out about, let's see, go with this, then the dark, and then the green. Okay, so there's our medium blue. Little ribbons of color straight down. You can actually go further than it'll end up being finished. Clear down into the sand. Next color you'll go into, you want to work this light to dark, so we're going to go to the darker blue. Take that out to about to here on each side. Isn't this neat? This is, in fact, this looks really, sometimes we call this the paint by number approach. It almost looks like, oh, here's a segment of color and another one, but when you're done, you are just going to love it because it looks like a real reflective water. Okay, then our last color, do you remember what our last color is? Okay, it's going to be the darkest color that you have, which is your green. And the green we'll take right on out. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit of this color that's lavender gray to lighten that up just a little bit. Not lighten it up, kind of tone it down so it's not too bright. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that tones it down a little bit. This should be, don't make it lighter than this one though, but you want to just lighten it up just a little bit. There, that's a good color. Okay, now you blend. In fact, you can go to your Sable Bright, number 10, do a soft blending up and down between colors. So that it looks like they kind of continue one color to the next. Kind of almost looks like a rainbow. Very vertical blending now. Take it right up to your foam too. Don't leave little spaces in here. Very vertical, right up in here. Okay, now you can pull some, now that you have that blended vertically, now you can go horizontal. This is another secret of water. It is so neat. Just if you can think about going vertical first, then horizontal, you're going to get a really, really nice shiny looking water. We'll let some of that blue pull over into the white, let some of this pull over into the other color. Very, very horizontal now. Really vertical at first, and now we're going really horizontal. Okay, after we've kind of, and I'm using this Sable number 10, after we've gone across this a little bit, then I'm going to get a blending brush. Get my little blending brush. Now I'm going to blend a couple of different things. I'm going to blend up in here a little bit. Make that nice and soft. Blend a little bit in this water. And you can actually kind of blend a little bit on your foam here too if you'd like. This is amazing what this brush does. This makes your painting look so nice and soft. Okay, a little bit of this foam. Now we'll blend our little wet sand. We call this the wet sand, even though it's water. Okay, very smooth, soft blend across there. Now we'll block in our sand. Grab your great big brush. We're going to do broad stroking on this. I'm going to darken up this sand color a little bit more. You don't want it too brown. You want it kind of to be a little bit more gray brown. Okay, here's our sand. In fact, I want a little bit more gray. Now to gray this, if I have it too brown, what do I do? Do you remember what I need to do? I'll add a little bit of, there we go, a little bit of blue to it. Okay, really scrub this in. Now go right up to the wet sand that you just blocked in there with your little rainbow colors. Actually, they're not all the colors of the rainbow, they're just your blue rainbow colors. We are doing fantastic. This is great. This is turning out so neat. Okay, kind of cut into there a little bit. Now it's okay, see if you get a little bit lighter in here, right up against where the sand is. Now this next step, ooh, be really careful. In fact, I'm going to have you change brushes so that you don't do it too big. Cut into this a little bit to kind of overlap some little places where the water came rolling in. You kind of want to overlap it. Now still keep it pretty horizontal, but you can crisscross it a little bit if you want to. Okay, like that. Pull in a little bit of this sand color. Kind of almost blend that water right out into the sand. See, we're cutting in. These are little kind of ripples. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is go on to our rocks. Start with this background rock, and we'll still use that sable. It's a sable flat is what it is. The difference between bright and flat is they're the same shape. They're kind of flat on the tip, but one's a little longer than the other. Okay, block this in. This is the lightest color that we mixed. Remember those three colors that were the combination, the ultramarine and the sienna with white? This is the lightest of those. Okay, we'll just fill that in, then we'll go on to the next darker color. A bit of medium as we're painting. This will make this come closer to us. The light haziness puts it into the distance. This will bring it closer. You see the difference there? Ooh, there's a little rock. A little closer. Now I'm going to dip into my darkest color next. Do these side ones and these over here. This still is a little bit brown. I'm going to grab a little bit of blue and mix with it. I like it to be kind of blue just because the whole painting is in kind of blue tones. You see how those rocks kind of go back and back because of the difference in values of these colors. Okay, now you can put a little bit of a reflection in here because of that rock. I'm actually going to paint right over the water that I've got, but it's going to give you a little reflection. Can you believe this? I bet you can't believe you're doing this. This is so fun. This is just a neat painting to do. There we go. I've got this foam splashing up against that rock. Dark rock over in here. Kind of fill that in. Now these little rocks here in the foreground. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'll just edge them and I'll block them with a bigger brush. That'll actually make it go a little faster, and if you want to, that's okay. Just kind of put an edge in here. I'm going to grab my bigger brush to block that in. I'm going to need a little bit more color. Now this one we didn't use much color on, so I can just take my brush and blend up some more to paint with. Just a touch of white. On the bottom of the rock, you want to keep that pretty horizontal too. In fact, we can make a definite edge on this one. Okay, now we're going to put some highlights on, and that will be the finishing part of our painting. And to do that, you'll want to get your little script brush. This is the smallest little brush that we're using. This is a little detail brush that's number 1. Very, very thin paint. And now we're going to come right down. We'll follow this area that's the sun path. We're going to lay in off-white. This is really thinned out. Very soupy. We're going to lay in this off-white right in this, what we call the sun path. The sun in this picture, even though you don't see it, is right above you, right in the middle of the picture. Okay. Put a few little highlights on this part. You can actually pick up a few little sparkles over in here. Now when I talk about sparkles too, another thing you can do, I think, that makes a painting look really neat is to just add little dots, little sparkly dots. A little couple of dots in here. That'll just really pick up the sun and make it shine. Okay, we'll highlight this background water here. Here again, right in the very center where the path of the sun is coming. You can even add some right here on where the wave is curling over. See how that adds sun right in the very, very center of it? Isn't that neat? Really, really sparkly. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do, and the very last little thing, is we're going to highlight the rocks. This will bring sun into the rocks. Now you'll dip into this little rock mixture that we have, and you can actually make different shapes. You can cut into this one, even though we blocked it in with all dark, and make it appear to be another rock in here. Okay, using a little script brush. Try to stay, this one actually needs a little bit of, if you get into the shadow side, you'll want to add a little bit of this shadow color, the shadow foam, which I did just now. Okay, a few more highlights up in here. You can still use the same highlight color for the back rock in here. Right along. Ooh. Okay, cut into this one. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this. Since the sun's coming here, instead of highlighting on that same side of the rock over here, the sun's here, so it's going to shine over on this side of this rock. There's some highlights there. Cut into this one with a few highlights. Maybe we'll add a little bit of a rock right in here. A little bit of shadow foam color, this lavender gray. And you can add a few highlights over in here, pull a little bit of the water off and splash it down around the base here. You may want to give a little bit of a reflection under here. Oh, that looks wonderful. Okay. Now that we have, in fact, did you want to take a look at this? Now that we have finished our oil painting, isn't that neat? You should practically be able to feel that cool ocean breeze and to hear the rolling splash against the rocks, to see the sun sparkling on the water. I hope you've enjoyed this painting and painting this seascape, and that it has opened up new horizons for you to expand on in painting your future seascapes.